video for them to show afterwards internally in our Slack.
I see.
Okay.
Cool.
Cool, guys. Let me introduce you to Jerry. Jerry is a data science manager indeed. You know these Japanese companies very well. Maybe Jerry, you can do a very short presentation, self-introduction of yourselves. Oh yeah, perfect. That's a perfect slide.
All right. Yeah, so I guess we should go ahead and get started. All right. Yeah, so please, by the way, feel free to interrupt me and yeah, like ask lots of questions. Yeah, I want this to be the kind of interactive and casual session. Yeah, so with that, yeah, I'll start. So yeah, I joined Indeed Japan in the candidate recommendation team as a data science manager last year. So basically what we do is we have a database of jobs and job seekers, and basically we use machine learning to scalably recommend massive numbers of candidates to jobs, and hopefully those job seekers will actually find some jobs that they like. Yeah, so that's the idea. And then previously I worked at a couple of companies, including Google and Supercell, which is a mobile game developer from Finland, and also Smart News. They're a mobile news app. I built the data science team for them in Japan. And yeah, also I'm Taiwanese American, and I've lived in a couple of countries before. Yeah, up until now, I've actually reviewed over 2,000 applicants to data roles. So yeah, I guess I can probably provide a few tips here and there about like hiring for data scientists. Yeah. Okay, so I actually made some slides like based on some of the questions that I already got. But yeah, again, feel free to jump in and interrupt. Yeah. So somebody asked about what are the popular data roles, and I just wanted to kind of emphasize that it might. I mean, it's good to know what is popular, but you shouldn't necessarily aim for what is popular. I would recommend that you think hard about what kind of role is like the one that you would like. Yeah, so recently in Japan, there's a lot of these, a lot of hiring for these roles that somehow combine business skills and data science skills, right? So when I say business skills, that might be communication or project management or domain knowledge, consulting experience, that kind of thing, and data science skills on top of that, right? But it might not be for you. Like for example, for me, I don't really want to spend a lot of time dealing with clients directly, especially in Japan. Clients tend to be very demanding and might be a little stressful. Or like if you don't speak Japanese, then probably like a client-facing role in Japan might not be the best role for you right now. Yeah. Yeah. Also, yeah, many roles. They might involve like different difficulties of data science. So it might sound like a really cool data science role, but after you find out the details, like you're like, oh, okay, it's actually just like doing some simple stuff in Excel, and it's not really the kind of data science you were looking for. So it's good to understand what you're getting into. Yeah. So I would recommend that you read the job description very carefully, understand what they're looking for, what kind of work it is, and there's a lot of different titles such as data analyst, business intelligence analyst, data scientist, machine learning engineer, research analyst, applied research scientist. There's so many different words and positions, and they mean different things at different companies. Even at the same company, the meaning can change, right? So Lyft, they rebranded data analyst to data scientist, for example, right? And so some roles might require actually hardcore engineering skills, and maybe you don't have that. So you want to be aware of that, and and some roles might be more business oriented, and if you have some business experience, then like maybe that's for you, or maybe it's not. It's just something to really understand and think about. Okay, and any questions on like the different types of data roles?
Maybe question for me, like in Japan, what is the most demanded data science roles you've seen?
I don't have the exact statistics, but yeah, as I mentioned, some like I think actually like data analysis type of work is like high in demand. So like a data analysis that focuses on driving kind of business results, right? So an analysis to increase sales or improve marketing, that kind of thing is, there's a lot of roles like that, and then there's also a lot of machine learning roles as well. Yeah, so yeah, it depend. Yeah, I guess you could aim for either depending on what you want to focus on.
Thank you.
With the range of roles that you mentioned before, kind of just broadly, obviously client-facing roles would require quite a bit of Japanese. In terms of the not so client-facing roles, from your experiences and maybe some of the information you get to see at Indeed, what do you usually see on average in terms of like the level of Japanese required for the more technical positions?
Right. So yeah, I can talk about the kind of
Looks like you've already got that prepared.
Yeah. So there are so you have to think about it from the employer perspective, right? So I mean, if it's a company where most of the company uses Japanese most of the time, then obviously it's like the better your Japanese, the more it helps. And some of these employers, like from their perspective, they're thinking of it like, well, we make a sacrifice by dropping or lowering the Japanese language requirement in order to gain access to better technical talent, right? So there might be, for example, there are these like actually big large Japanese companies with like research teams where there's like like some subset of the research team is actually a bunch of foreigners, and they do like machine learning research, but I mean they might have PhDs or something, so there might also be like companies that are like Line, which like it already had a lot of, it was already like quite international to begin with. Like a lot of it's like has some like Korean roots, so there were like Japanese and Korean people that had to communicate with each other, and then they started hiring like other nationalities, and now it's like a big mix of people, and again, in order to access that technical talent, they opened up to allow like English only role, like people who only speak English or don't speak Japanese. At Smart News, where I worked as well in 2017 when I joined, I would say like everyone in the Tokyo office spoke Japanese, and by the time I left in 2019, I would say that there were maybe 10 people that employees in the Tokyo office that didn't speak any Japanese, and then maybe another 10 that had like intermediate or beginner Japanese, and then the company hired translators to help deal with that. Mercari is another example. They also hired like a quite professional translation team to allow for foreign workers to work in Japan easily. And Rakuten is kind of like an outlier in that it just kind of told the entire company to speak English. So there are various ways to get away with not speaking Japanese, but it's usually better if you do speak Japanese. Oh yeah, I forgot I had this slide. So yeah, there's also the startups founded by foreigners or with a high foreigner ratio, So yeah, for example, Cogent Labs, it like almost all of the technical talent is foreigners, although a lot of them have a research background. Yeah, but most startups, unless they're like a kind of data focused startup, they usually don't need a data scientist. Like when they're just starting, it might be like the third or fourth year of the startup before they actually need a data scientist, because they need some time to create the app and collect data and stuff. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Somebody asked about tech. By the way, this isn't in like any particular order, so sorry if it like flows kind of weird. But yeah, someone asked about tech stack and tools. So I think in Japan, typically, actually, the tech stack is not that different from like what is like popular in Silicon Valley or in other countries, right? So yeah, so things like AWS and Java and Ruby, those are very popular globally, but I would say especially popular in Japan. So it can really help you get a job if you know those. But for data type work in particular, I've heard that you are all learning Python and SQL, and I would say those are still the most important things. So it's great that you learned that. Yeah, and then Java tends to be useful for server stuff, like if you're deploying your machine learning model to a server, and then kind of serving those machine learning results in production, or sometimes like working with big data. Java sometimes comes in handy. R is more for like some like statistical analyses, and it's kind of becoming less popular than Python. So yeah, that's true both in Japan and globally, I would say. But it's still, there's still like a decent community in Japan for R as well. Yeah, and then other things to know, Airflow, which is a kind of, I would say, data workflow orchestration platform or framework that's popular globally and in Japan. Linux, Bash scripting, database stuff, distributed data stuff. Yeah, again, both in and outside of Japan. Yeah, major machine learning libraries. There was a Japanese framework called Chainer. However, I guess you don't really need to learn that anymore, because even the company Preferred Networks behind a Chainer, they decided to drop it in favor of PyTorch. Yeah, there are some like Japan specific tools, but you usually don't need to worry about it. And it might show up in your career at some point, but it's probably similar to some other tool that is globally popular, and it shouldn't be that hard to learn. So yeah, does any questions about the like tech stack or tools?
Seems pretty in line with what we learned over the last over the course, so it's good to know that it matches.
Nice. Yeah, by the way, I'm speaking from experience, from kind of like Japanese startups and like foreign tech companies, and I would imagine that at kind of like, I don't know, like a car manufacturer or like a big traditional bank or something, like the tech stack would be different. Yeah. Okay, channels to get hired. Yeah, so I think it really helps just to be like very proactive. So you should reach out to a lot of people, maybe friends of friends. You can search for acquaintances of acquaintances which you didn't even know about. Oops. On LinkedIn, for example, you can like read news about a startup. You could even like contact a startup out of nowhere, offer to do some work for them. If you're very junior, or you don't have that much work experience, then yeah, you might even just say like, hey, can you do an internship? Like actually my when I interned at Google, there wasn't even an internship program in Japan. I just kind of like asked if if it was okay to do an internship, and I ended up actually doing that internship. Yeah, you can talk to various headhunters. So there's both headhunters like that are just kind of good in general, and then also these headhunters or recruiting platforms that specialize in something. So for example, Team AI and BitGrit, they specialize more in kind of machine learning or analyst type of roles. These other ones, like Just.io specializes in bilingual startups, and the other ones are kind of, they serve a bunch of different types of companies, but they have like a large percentage of foreign candidates, I would say. You can also go to various events. So this is just a small list of the possible events. There's actually tons and tons of events. So yeah, for example, Hacker News, Machine Learning Tokyo is a really great community. There are these like big conferences held by these big or medium-sized companies like Google Cloud, which yeah, you can just go there and like walk around and talk to people. It's actually a lot of fun, I would say. There's usually like a big like open booth section where you can go around to various booths and yeah, just check out different companies, like see what they're working on, get a sense of like, yeah, what kind of like skills and technologies are popular. Yeah, maybe make a connection that you can later leverage to actually get a job or internship. Yeah, and also just yeah, there are these like platforms that make it easy to get alerts. So yeah, Indeed actually provides such a service. Glassdoor and LinkedIn provide that kind of service too. You could also set a Google alert for any arbitrary keyword. So for a while, I actually had like a Google alert set on the keyword like data scientist in Japanese. So I would just kind of get if there's any article about that, then it would come into my inbox like once a week or something. Yeah. Again, be very proactive. Don't annoy people, but be proactive. I've seen so many. Yeah. By the way, this isn't really like specific to Japan, but just yeah, in general, you might have to be if you don't, if you don't like qualify for most of the jobs out there, then you need to be kind of extra proactive to kind of overcome that, right? So like, okay, if you have too few years of work experience, then by having like a really professional resume that's written really well, that describes and highlights the parts of your experience or education that stands out. There's like zero mistakes, looks really nice. That helps. And if you have typos in your resume, then that might mean that in the future you'll have typos in your code, which might cause the machine learning system to break, for example. So it matters. And yeah, a lot of people, they might be really good kind of on paper, but then they're really bad at the interview. So just practice. Or some people, they're like actually smart and they would actually be good at the job, but they're still bad at the interview. And then so it's just a shame because then you're kind of shortchanging yourself. So yeah, like interviews actually in some sense, like they're not a perfect evaluation of if you're a good person for the job. They're a perfect evaluation of if you're good at interviews. So like you can kind of get like almost an unfair advantage actually if you just have more interview experience than the other candidates applying. Yeah, and I would say, yeah, the current job market is a little tough for like people just going into data science without fluent Japanese, but yeah, there are still various opportunities around. So yeah, just be persistent, and in a few years, like you'll have it'll be easy to get tons of offers. Okay, any questions on the like getting like methods to get hired?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about, I mean, the most difficult part really is kind of getting in the door, getting face to face with someone,
Right.
with the resume. And you mentioned that you had some experience with different startups here in Japan. and you yourself are actually part of the hiring process, what would you see on a junior profile that would make you want to interview them over other junior profiles, for example?
Right. So, just like, okay, one, is this person like really serious about applying to this job? Right. So, sometimes I can tell that, okay, this person is obviously just, spamming the same resume to hundreds of jobs. Sometimes I can tell, so they're not like, customizing the resume. They're not really demonstrating like, okay, why do they want this particular job? Right. So, and then sometimes it's like, well, if they didn't put much effort into their resume or cover letter or email that contains the resume, that shows, right? So if someone is like really eager to learn, really demonstrates that they're learning quickly, like working hard to become a more experienced data scientist, right? Really enthusiastic about the mission of the company, and really would be cool to work with, and probably in 1 year would be a lot stronger than they are now. Yeah, then that would make me want to interview that junior candidate over another junior candidate, right? Yeah, and of course, like like years of work experience is not the only thing, right? Like if one person has like a data science blog or a GitHub something, which and they've been let's say have some like interesting like data science projects which are like well written and have like cool, not necessarily cool, but like well made data visualizations that are interesting. Yeah, that shows like, yeah, this person is passionate about data science. They've demonstrated that they can, through their blog, that they can communicate well. They can make clean and like easy to understand data visualizations, right? That shows something, right? Whereas for another candidate, I might have no such information. So it's like, do I even want to like waste time on checking if this person is able to like communicate well and make and code well? Like I would rather just interview the person where like they've already demonstrated that they can do those things well, or at least they provide some hints of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
So do you actually check GitHub?
Yeah. So if a resume has a GitHub link, I mean, I won't look at like every single file, right? But like if they have a link to a blog and a link to GitHub, I usually look at the blog first, just because it's usually like like easier to quickly assess like the output of their work, right? Whereas GitHub is usually a bit more messy. Like I have to dig into it a little bit more, but I can usually quickly see like, okay, this person, they've only they pushed like one commit like every half year, so they're just like not very active, right? So then that's like really not really meaningful. Or sometimes I can tell like, okay, this person, they just cloned a project from somewhere else and then didn't really change it very much, so that's also like not that meaningful. Yeah, but yeah, sometimes they do have something meaningful, and then and also just like having some, even if it's like just a bunch of like tutorials and stuff, that's not like super meaningful, but that's still a lot better than nothing, I would say.
Cool, thank you. I'm not sure if you covered it afterwards or not, but could you just let us know, for example, how does a typical hiring interview in Indeed look like? How many steps are there?
Let's see. Yeah, it depends on how you count the steps, but I would say there's kind of like one take-home assessment, and then maybe like 7 interviews. Other than that, I would say like for Indeed, it's slightly longer than with other companies. I know that at other companies, it can tend to be like between 4 to 6 interviews, for example. And sometimes if it's like just a very small startup, or something. It might even just be like 2 or 3 interviews, or they might not even have like a, a proper like process in place. It's like, oh, like you chat with the CEO and the CEO likes you, then boom, you're in, kind of. That can happen as well. And yeah, to break down the kind of interviews, there can be like a take-home exercise where like, okay, you take, here's a CSV or here's an Excel file of some data, and then write some Python or R code to analyze the data and describe the insights from that, right? Or it could be like take home machine learning exercise, right? So like predict or classify like this thing, and then and describe your methodology, and then they'll evaluate you on the accuracy of the prediction, and how clean your code was, and and how well you explained it, right? And then there are the interview components. There's typically like a kind of like a resume deep dive, or kind of asking you about your past experience in school or at work, right? What kind of projects did you work on? What kind of accomplishments did you have? And then there's usually some sort of coding interview, right? That actually demonstrates your coding skills. So if it's like a more hardcore engineering role, there might be like a software whiteboard, like algorithm, describe how an algorithm on a whiteboard type of interview. There also might be like something that like is testing your SQL skills, right? Like if given this data table and that data table, like calculate this thing, and you have to like do a join and stuff to be able to get the results using SQL, for example, right? And then usually there's like a case study thing, like, okay, given this kind of situation with our product or with the business, like how would you analyze it? How would you like what kind of data would you look at? How would you transform that data? How would you experiment? How would you conduct an experiment to ensure that your recommended course of action like actually generates business impact? So kind of like a case study type of question. So yeah, those are the kind of common interview elements, I would say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, anything else on getting hired before I jump into compensation, the juicy part? All right, yeah, compensation. So yeah, I would say that, obviously, people love having like high compensation, but in your first job, like if you are kind of junior, then I would say the learning and growth is really important, and that will lead to better compensation and career growth in the longer term. So I mean, don't like change yourself, like don't not care about compensation. You should still care about it, but it shouldn't be your number one priority for your first data science job, right? So there is a very large range, right? So like the 4 million range might be like a small Japanese company with kind of like that is not really famous, and kind of has like mediocre talent or something. It's like, so hopefully, yeah, like hopefully you could try to shoot for better than that. Although yeah, again, like sometimes you just need like a stepping stone. You can start somewhere, you can start off with what you can get, and then after 1 or 2 years, like you use that as a stepping stone to get another job that's better. So I guess don't worry if your first job isn't like your dream job. And then I would say like the kind of like hot Japanese startups, like Smart News, Mercari, Line. Oh, I guess that's not really a startup, but that kind of company, right, can probably pay you like between if you're more junior, then maybe like 6 to 8 million, right? And then if you have like a few years of experience, right, it can go up to like 9 or 10 million. And then like companies like Google, Indeed, or like Goldman Sachs, or like foreign insurance companies or something, right? Then it can get like to be pretty high. So you know, like well over 10 million, you know, maybe like 15 million base salary or something. And then, you know, there's like, you know, stock options or stock units and, you know, bonuses and like other like various, you know, incentive systems, right? It can add up to, you know, well over 20 million if you have some experience under your belt. And you know, then and you know, it's typically the foreign companies that offer that level of salary, although it's not impossible at a Japanese company. Yeah, and you can also like just figure out, okay, how well does a company compensate in general by looking at their software engineer salaries, because there's usually a lot more information available on the software engineering salaries. And yeah, for example, Indeed actually just you can estimate it, like all of our salaries are actually public, but you can see that actually for the same level, like a data science salary is actually slightly higher than a software engineer salary, and at some companies it's like about the same. Yeah. So, and then like a data analyst would be probably like slightly lower than a software engineer or data scientist. Yeah, but not necessarily. Yeah. So yeah, here there I stole some yeah, just this data from this like salary guide. Yeah, so you can see how it ranges it ranges quite widely. Yeah. Also, there's, yeah, so to talk a little bit more about the non-salary portion, right? So just, you know, make an effort to understand this. It's actually very surprising, like how many people they'll accept offers and like actually they have no idea like how much their stock options are worth. So you should at least attempt to figure this out. Yeah, so sometimes it's actually very difficult for you to value yourself. Sometimes you just have to ask the company to estimate, like, you know, how much do you think the stock option is worth? Like, what do you predict it to? Sometimes they'll say like, well, it's hard to say, and then you can ask them to try to predict it. And then there's just some companies that just won't tell you at all. They just won't, you know, they won't even tell you like what percent of the company would you own, like given the stock option. Like that, I would say at least, you know, I think people should have the right to know that, but there's companies that just won't tell you. I don't like that, but yeah, it can happen. And also like there are a lot of these like stories about, okay, yeah, people getting like super rich over stock options, right? Especially in Silicon Valley. But yeah, in Japan, usually the stock options are not worth that much. Of course, there are some kind of outliers or exceptions, right? But you know, in general, like you know, when companies go IPO in Japan, like they're not worth billions of dollars. That just like almost never happens. Like if a startup goes public and has like a 10 billion yen valuation, that's like $100 million. That's already considered very good, right? Whereas like for a Silicon Valley startup, that's like nothing, or for like a Chinese like hot startup, that's nothing. But for Japan, that's like, oh, that's like not bad. So yeah, you can just like calculate like, oh, okay, even if the company goes public, that I would still only make like a small amount of money. It's not like life-changing money. So maybe it's just better to, you know, choose another job with higher salary. I just kind of try to get a sense of, you know, what things are worth. Okay, so that's any questions on compensation? All right, I guess I'll just keep going. So yeah, other tips. Yeah, you should be proactive about your research on companies as well, right? So you can yeah, look, there's some, you know, obviously on Japanese companies, there's probably more information available in Japanese. So yeah, if you can read Japanese, then you can read it directly, or you can use Google Translate or something. Um, yeah, you can look at Glassdoor, but a lot of the reviews are for outside Japan. Again, like as I mentioned, you can try to find like an acquaintance of acquaintance on LinkedIn, or oh yeah, go to, like sometimes these companies will have like events where, you know, you can visit their office, or something. Recently, there's more online events where you can, you know, the engineers of the company will talk about like the machine learning system that they built or something, and you can just kind of attend and, you know, and understand the company better. Like one, to actually decide if you want to apply it, and two, like when you actually apply to the company, you can kind of mention that, oh, you attended the event, and that gives a good impression that you've really demonstrated strong interest in the company, right? And of course, you can read news about the company to understand it better. Just don't just like spam your resume to a bunch of companies without like understanding them well. That's usually a bad idea. And also, like, you want to keep growing, right? So so I understand that you've gone through like a great kind of educational experience in the last couple of weeks, right? But it's you're just getting started, right? So and some of you might not have like hard engineering skills, and not every role requires that, but a lot of roles highly appreciate, either require or highly appreciate such skills, right? So like if you're able to build a model in a Jupyter notebook using Python, that's different than like actually deploying that system to like a large scalable service, right? And serving millions of users reliably with low latency. You might not want to just like get too deep into like all the engineering stuff, but like if you know some of the basics, so that you're very skilled at interacting with engineers, or you can kind of pick do some engineering stuff yourself like when needed, that just comes in very helpful very often. Obviously studying Japanese, right? Like it if you're planning to stay in Japan for a while, it's just worth it, right? It'll open up more career opportunities for you. The soft skills, right? So don't underestimate how important this is, right? And it's not, for example, like building a machine learning model is just like one step, right? There's like the project management of, okay, like how do you like schedule the machine learning project, and how do you communicate to people, and make sure that they have realistic expectations on it, and and make sure that that the various components are worked on properly. Like there's a lot of these like soft skills that come in very handy. And there's a lot of things to learn, right? So you have to prioritize, right? So you might you might have a different career goal. Some of you might want to become more like a business analyst. Some of you might want to become more like a hardcore machine learning engineer. If you learn everything, it might be just like overwhelming and like too stressful. So you might want to just try to figure out your direction, and and study more things like related to that direction. And if you want to be a data scientist in general, like just to stay relevant, you just have to keep on learning, because there's always new tools and new techniques coming out, and and if you don't stay on top of it, then then it's hard to to stay like a top-notch data scientist. So you kind of have to like continually learning, otherwise it might not be a great fit for you as a career. So that's something to keep in mind. Okay, so those are all my slides. I'd just like to open it up for like any kind of question in general. You can also like follow me. I'll write some articles about like machine learning or data science, sometimes on Medium. Any other questions?
One quick question before Aaron asks his. So you mentioned that, like you mentioned a lot of roles about the pure data science. Is there any way, for example, to do our, let's say, project management role for data science teams? Is it realistic to do in Japan?
Yeah. So do you mean like, is it realistic as in like as somebody with no relevant experience, or?
Yeah. The entry level job. Yeah.
I see. I mean, so I think so if you have like zero data science work experience, and you have like zero project management and product management experience, then I would say it's very difficult, right? But if you have some sort of relevant experience, so you have some like domain knowledge in the given industry, or you've done like you've managed other types of projects but not data science projects, right? Then a lot of those people will transition from like managing non-data projects to managing data products, for example, right? So yeah, I would say you need to have at least some sort of relevant experience.
So yeah, well, for example, one student has over 10 years of the experience managing projects. And if, for example, the student has the data science skills, is it realistic for the student to find a job as a project manager for data science?
Yeah. I would say that is definitely a possibility. Yeah, in fact, there was the product manager for my team, which is a machine learning team right now. She had like zero machine learning experience before joining, and she but she had like both software engineering and product managing and project management experience. And so the expectation was that, okay, you come in, you can leverage your past experience, but you need to ramp up very quickly on the machine learning knowledge after joining, and that's what she did, and she's doing a good job. So yeah, I would say that that person does have a good shot at such roles. But yeah, however, like if there's also like the language issue, right? So if it's like depending on the language requirement and the language ability, then that might be also a factor.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Um,
Especially given your experience in reviewing a lot of candidates and portfolios, can you give us a realistic expectation of Japan as a market and its openness to foreigners and diversity and all of that? Just like the real talk view of it.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, to be like regarding diversity, I would say to be honest, most employers in Japan, at least like most Japanese companies, don't really care that much. To be honest, they just want to hire like someone who's good at the job, if the person who's good at the job is will help like increase like the number of nationalities on the team, like I don't think it's like if there's already like 10 Chinese people in the team and they can add like an 11th Chinese person versus like an 11th person from like Lithuania or something, I don't think they care like where they're from. It's just can they do the job well. Okay, so that's one answer. But in terms of like openness to foreigners in general, like it's not talking about diversity but just openness to foreigners, I would say it's Japan is increasingly open, and it's largely driven just by the huge demand for this technical talent and data talent, and a lack of supply, right? Yeah, so so Rakuten again is kind of like a trailblazer in like forcing their whole company to speak Japanese so that like lots of foreigners could join, right? So there's a huge number of foreigners there. It's actually a lot of foreigners use that as a kind of stepping stone to they'll go to Rakuten first, and then they might choose to stay there or find another job that they like more after that. Yeah, and these companies like Mercari, Smart News, Line, as I mentioned, right, they all have like increased their like foreigner percentage a lot like over the last few years. Yeah, and there's also like more and more startups that have like a mix of Japanese and foreigners. So yeah, I would say that it of course depends on the company, but it's there's a lot of companies that are very open to hiring foreigners, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then if I can ask one more question. For you personally as a manager, if you could reflect on your, maybe the hire that you're most proud of, especially in the data science world, what is it that makes you proud of that hire, or whether it's the hiring process itself, or how they turned out in their work, or what is it that you would say, okay, this is the person I'm proudest of hiring? So kind of as a guide for us, not just for looking for roles, but also in terms of once we're somewhere, you know, how to best contribute, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. So yeah, I would say there's yeah, like one person I hired at Smart News, who initially we were on the fence about hiring him because he was, you know, more junior than what we were looking for, right? And yeah, but he just like demonstrated so much potential. Like he, you know, was like, you know, very curious about data science, you know, like excellent academics. He had like a, you know, very well written blog, a data science blog, and you know, seemed like very smart. So it was like, okay, yeah, if we just give this person a chance, and then, you know, like give him a lot of coaching and a lot of like challenging projects, like this person will really grow. And really, you know, be like a big contributor in the long term. And yeah, I would say that, you know, initially it was slow, but you know, after about a year, he was, you know, contributing a lot to the company. And yeah, it was just like very fulfilling to see him grow like that. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm really glad we decided to take a chance on him. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have one other one about in terms of you said like keeping your engineering skills fresh and learning new things, and focusing on actually deployment of machine learning models. Obviously, we had some experience of that while we were on this course. In terms of that, would that be actually building some form of a full website for someone to interact with it, or like what would be kind of the best way if we were going to do maybe 2 or 3 different projects of deploying something like this? Would it be building some sort of a service or just a rough proof of concept?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like the best kind of experience is you know, something that you know, serves an actual use case, like it's like an actual product, right? So I mean, yeah, I mean, the best kind of experience is that a lot of companies, or especially tech companies, like is like if you've directly worked on a product that's like, you know, millions of users use every day or something, right? But of course, like, you know, if you're just, you know, building something on your own, right? It's, you know, you don't like magically have millions of users, right? But you know, if it's like a real website, you know, like even if you only have, you know, like dozens of users per day or something, but it's like a real website that like that actually does something, right? That anybody can visit. And, you know, for example, I don't know, it can like, you know, classify like their pets or something, you know, like it's actually used, like it's a real app, or it's like a real website, or it's like a real service. You know, I would say that's like the best kind of project, rather than like, you know, a project where you know, you just like create it as like, you know, part of like a tutorial or something, and then you just, you know, just dump it on GitHub and then it's over, right? I mean, that's, you know, but of course much better than nothing, right? But you know, actually like running a real like service that is like serving real users, that, you know, that will give you some experience that is different and better, I would say, than like a service that's like done purely for practice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question regarding the projects. If we are to make a project that deals with the data, which is not directly related to the industry profit, but it is related to a social cause, would that project be considered by a company?
Yeah, why not, right? So I think there, you know, I mean, like of course, like if your project topic is like directly related to the industry that the company is in, or right, or like related to like you know, problems that the company is trying to solve, right? You know, of course that helps, right? Of course that's a benefit. But you know, your project could be, you know, about something else entirely different, right? And you know, that still, you know, could be like very valuable experience, right? And you know, and the nice thing about like data science is that you know, although domain experience is important, but like a lot of the like data skills are transferable, right? So yeah, if you know like statistics, or if you know like Python, if you know, you know, how to, you know, like you know, join like two like SQL tables, or if you know how to like manipulate data in pandas or something, right? Like those skills are transferable across like all sorts of industries, you know, and recruiters know that. So you know, like if you're yeah, so and you know, like the like, you know, social impact type of work, it's also, you know, like a nice to have kind of thing, you know. It, you know, helps like demonstrate your character, right? So and some companies would view that positively. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does that, yeah, okay.
Cool. Thank you so much, Jerry. We went slightly over the time. My apologies for that, but it was very, very interesting. I hope it was very valuable information for our students today. Guys, don't hesitate to add Jerry, follow him on the social media that he left on his slide. Once again, Jerry, thank you so much for your time, and hope that you will see our students next time during some data science presentations and projects, already doing some Japanese companies.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to seeing that. All right. Good luck, everyone.
Thank
Thank you so
you.
much.
And bye-bye. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.